There is a village tucked away on Ghana's western coast. The people call it Dixcove, but for centuries, it has lived in the long shadow of a silent monolith. Standing there is a structure built by the English in 1698, an angular brooding fortress with thick walls, arched embrasures, and the weight of something left unsaid. They called it Fort Metal Cross. Not for a crucifix nor salvation, but for the iron emblem flown above its battlements, an English symbol of dominance over the Gold Coast trade. From the sea, it gleamed like a beacon, guiding ships from Dixcove's harbor, not just a symbol of faith, but a signal of an empire. Welcome to Wars of Power, Shores of Pain, Ghana's forts and castles reimagined by a Ghanaian filmmaker. Today, we explore Fort Metal Cross, named after the towering iron cross once fixed on its highest point. It was erected at the peak of English ambition. After watching the Dutch fortify the coast with stone, the Royal Africa Company moved fast. Dixcove, a naturally sheltered bay, was perfect. Gold-rich, palm oil laden, and strategically close to the rival posts. But the real assets? Control over trade routes, both legal and shadowed.
This fort, originally meant for trade, gold, palm oil, it later became part of the Darker network. You see this tunnel? Locals say it runs straight to the beach. Some say it was used at night to smuggle human cargo discreetly.
Officially, Fort Metal Cross wasn't a slave fort. The legends speak of commerce, gold dust, gin, textiles. But the village elders, they remember otherwise. The British fortified the structure with bastions and cannons, guarding it from the sea invaders and inland resistance. It became a power post. At its peak, Fort Metal Cross loomed over both trade and terror. By the mid-1800s, the tide was shifting. The Dutch had taken over the fort through a territorial swap in 1868. But even before that, power was cracking. In 1837, a spark lit the dry grass beneath it all. As you may have heard in the previous episode of Fort Bartenstein, King Bonsu II of the Ahanta people, a fierce and independent ruler, resisted to bow to the Dutch interference. When Dutch officials tried to meddle in local affairs, Badu Bonsu II responded with fire. Two Dutch officers were killed, including the acting governor. The Dutch called it mutiny, but the Ahanta people called it justice. Fort Metal Cross, now under the Dutch hands, became a launch pad for retaliation. Troops marched from its gate. Coastal villages were attacked. Resistance was hunted down. Badu Bonsu II was captured. He was executed by hanging and then decapitated. His head was sent to the Netherlands, sealed in a jar and lost to history until 2009.
That is part of our pain here. A king died, and his body wasn't whole for nearly 2 centuries. And the fort, it stood there, it watched. Well, they buried him again, but this time whole. His spirit can rest now.
But the story didn't end there. Decades later, after the Dutch packed up and handed their forts, including this one, back to the British in 1872, the air in Dixcove thickened again. 1 year later, another king rose. King Amankwaah of Busia, proud, defiant, and descendant from the Ahanta royal line, refused to accept the handover. To him, the land was never the Duchess to give, and the British had no right to rule it. He rallied his people and led the final Ahanta uprising.
They called it rebellion, but it was resistance. His crime was not surrendering.
The British struck fast. Troops were dispatched from Fort Metalcross and nearby strongholds. The rebellion was crushed. King Amankwaah was captured and exiled to Sierra Leone. His fall marked the end of the Ahanta political independence. And the fort? Once again, it watched. From gold to revolt, from trade to exile, Fort Metalcross has seen kings rise and fall. Badu Bonsu and Amankwaah, two names, two resistance, both echoing through the corridors of stone. Today, Fort Metalcross still watches over Dixcove. Its walls bear no visible wounds, but the air hangs heavy. Some say you can still hear him. Maybe, and just maybe, you will hear Badu Bonsu's voice, unbroken, unburied, still calling his people to rise. In a town divided by past and the present, Fort Metalcross stands between them, a relic and a reminder of gold bought with blood, of trade maxed at mercy, of a king who dared to say no. In fact, kings. You've been listening to Words of Power, Shores of Pain. Next, we travel east of the coast to one of the least spoken about forts, nicknamed the colonial CCTV by some of the locals. This is Words of Power, Shores of Pain, Ghana's forts and castles reimagined by a Ghanaian filmmaker. Written and narrated by me, Sikahene-Adarkwa. Tour guide's voice was played by Wusua. This series was fact-checked in consultation with Samuel Akwa of Ghana Museums and Monuments Board. Sound score and design by 801 Studios.